I'm very excited to bring you some news about the COVID virus. Welcome all of you. YouTube might be taking a little bit of time. Let's cross our fingers we don't buffer. Brian and I are both online right now. So welcome all of you. Today we're going to talk about the COVID surge. I'm going to give you some updates, some news. I have a bunch of information to share, particularly two core research articles and working papers. These are going to be really impactful for a lot of you who might be vulnerable or at risk with COVID. And most importantly, today, the latter half of today's live show, I want to talk to you about stress and your immunity, because your immune system is definitely impacted by stress, and even the surge and changes to maybe your state or local community and continuing the lockdowns and things like that. This is highly stressful. Even considering what community spread looks like and the risk factors is stress inducing. So I want to share with you a few protocols and resources that you can use on the daily and implement to help boost your immune system, because stress will negatively impact your immunity. So good morning, everybody. Tell me where you are all tuning in from. And let's dig right on into the news. So the world is at 10 million cases, 10,302,000. It's so crazy. The US is at 2.6 million cases. Brazil's at 1.3, almost 1.4 million. Russia's at 647,000. India's moved up just a little, up to 568,000 cases. And here in the States, we have 36 states that are seeing increases day over day and week over week. So this week we're seeing 36 cases with increases. 16 of those states have either pulled back on the reopening or are pausing the reopening process, meaning that state out of the 36, 16 states are recognizing that they have not met the gating process to move forward. The challenge with that is a lot of states actually don't have a thorough, fully effective contact tracing system. So that is one challenge that we have on top of testing sites being fully booked. And here in Georgia, in our area, there's like a 2 to 4 day wait on getting an appointment for a COVID test. So Georgia, the Atlanta metro area is definitely seeing some increases, just given the need for tests. So let's dig into some specific information. I want to highlight Florida has moved up. Yesterday, they surpassed Illinois in the amount of cases. They posted over 6,000 cases. Are multiple closings of some of the beaches, and that will cause an effect, particularly in South Florida, to 4th of July activities that are beach oriented. Most of the time in Florida, you hit the beach and you see fireworks. And I see Clearwater, Florida, Regina, yay, Pinellas County. So that is something that we're going to be monitoring. Florida definitely had a very bad weekend, and we're also going to be seeing increases in testing sites, especially in my hometown in St. Pete and Tampa. There are big stadiums. Our football and baseball stadiums are open for drive-through testing, and I've already heard a little bit about how that's going to play out. So we'll monitor those areas. For any of you living in California, you guys are at 216,000 cases. And California is also pressing pause. They're scaling back a little bit of some of the activities with bars. And I believe that they'll be seeing some additional changes to the 4th of July holiday weekend. We do know holidays tend to be the source, as we saw with Memorial Day, spikes in June in the cases we're dealing with now. I think we can anticipate the same is going to be for 4th of July. So for any of you who have 4th of July plans that involve groups of 10 or more, you definitely want to scale back and make sure you are wearing face masks, socially distancing, being cognizant, because a lot of times these gatherings, they may be with folks who are minimally socially engaged, but there's still asymptomatic potential risk of transmission. Other states that we're monitoring, Georgia's on the increase. We hit 80,000 yesterday. We posted over 3,800, almost 4,000 cases yesterday. Arizona has had extensive growth. And they are part of the 16 states rolling things back. So in Arizona, they've closed bars, gyms, certain businesses. They've even pushed back the start of school. So schools right now have been pushed back to the 17th of August. The University of Arizona has halted the return of athletes for football and other activities in the fall. And the average age group that's hospitalized, we're seeing an increase. The 20 to 44 age comprises 22% of the hospitalizations in that area. And they are encouraging people to stay at home and minimize getting together, gathering, or being in any location, including shopping, where there are 10 people or more. So 10 or less is the big element that we're looking to minimize. Also, Michigan is almost at 70,000 cases. And I want to highlight, there's a bar in just outside of Michigan State, and I believe it's Lansing. There's a bar called Harper's Restaurant and Bar Pub. This single bar has been an epicenter. They have had 85 cases transmitted through bar activities. So folks gathering, drinking, and we know alcohol in bars are not great with COVID mix. It minimizes our ability to think properly, to make good decisions. And also we might be seeing people are wearing masks. They might be careless with the transmission of hands, and it's just all sorts of stuff. Alcohol is not a great combination when you're trying to be socially distant. This particular bar is encouraging folks who might have frequented the bar between June 12th through June 20th. If you went to that bar in that time frame, they want you to get tested and have a voluntary social distancing quarantine to quarantine yourself. So that's part of the challenge that we're seeing. This bar, the breakdown of contact tracing, which is one of the elements that has been the success in multiple countries who've been able to scale this down and get the cases under control, is the contact tracing. So identifying who and where you might have contacted or the sources, and then look at the spider webbing of all those people. And it's basically tracing the whereabouts and letting people know that they've come into contact so that we lower the spread. States don't have this buttoned up, and that is what we're seeing here. There are PSAs and news reports, and they're encouraging anybody who may have come in contact or been at that bar or location to self-report. And that's really, really challenging. So I do want to highlight a few guys. Let me show you guys on YouTube. I'm wearing my Peace, Love, and Sanitize tank. This is available on Etsy. Same with my earrings. These are affiliate links. So if you want to support a local business and also support us on our channel, feel free to go shopping. The shirt I wore yesterday is available as well. And they are all small businesses. I converse with a lot of them, really great people. Okay, so let's dig into some news. So the big question right now is really surrounding asymptomatic cases. We know that the degree of community spread, there's a very large percentage of potentially asymptomatic cases. And the question is, are people really asymptomatic? Are they pre-symptomatic? Because the contact tracing that is being done does end up showing unusual manifestations of the virus. And sorry, I think we've got we just had a FedEx delivery. Dogs are freaking out. Okay. So the unusual manifestation might be COVID toes or headaches. And not everybody kind of articulates a headache as, a symptom of a respiratory illness or anything like that. Similarly, the asymptomatic cases, when they are analyzed, particularly through a CT scan, 50% of these cases that are scanned, we identify lung inflammation as well as scarring, and even what we call pulmonary infiltrate, which is an indication of pneumonia. So there are asymptomatic cases that have pneumonia walking around thinking they're totally fine and they're not. And so we have to really kind of mentally recalibrate how we're thinking about asymptomatic, because that's what we're hearing, especially in some of the younger population. They're like, well, it's okay. If I get symptoms, I'm young, I'm totally fine. No, that is not true. That even though you might not be presenting with symptoms, when contact tracers actually communicate with them and they go through the litany of all the different symptoms, loss of taste and smell. Sometimes people don't even recognize that. I know that sounds crazy, but they don't register that. Well, that's the beginning. That's phase 1 of the neuro-COVID impact. So we have to really kind of have, we need some sort of methodology right now to answer the unknown. We just don't know how many asymptomatic cases do we have, and what's the percentage of those to the cases that are showcasing symptoms. That's an unknown. So we have silent spreaders, and that's part of our challenge with community spread. And that's why it becomes really critical to peace, love, sanitize your hands, wear protective eyewear over your face, over your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. So for any of you who are concerned about, wearing a mask, this is Gabriel's cute little mask, you can easily get protection that would be like a face shield. And I'll put some links up. But that is very critical. Okay, so let's see. The other thing that I want to highlight is I've presented over the last 6 days with all of you the COVID, the neurological challenges and the brain-related inflammation that COVID actually does hit the brain, and it infiltrates it. It causes inflammation. There's 3 layers. If you're interested in this, watch a few of the videos. I think Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I highlight a little bit about this study-wise, but we call it neuro-COVID. And a neurologist in Virginia has broken down the kind of 3 phases. The latter phase, we see a blood-brain barrier breakdown. So we have a leaky blood-brain barrier, which is not what we need for helping improve and stabilize our brain health. What we're seeing in cases, 2/3 to 3/4 of the ICU patients with COVID, they are presenting with delirium. I've highlighted this a little bit more, but I've got more specific information. So paranoia is a big part of it. And they actually categorize the delirium as hyperactive and hypoactive delirium. So for any of you who have family or friends who have tested positive, have been in the ICU, maybe they weren't on ventilation, but maybe they had oxygen. Just the nature of being in ICU, the nature of this being such an isolated experience, they can't have family and friends around, limited contact with the healthcare providers, and then some of the medications that they're on. What they're showing is that this divides out into 2 degrees of delirium. Hyperactive delirium will present as paranoia. They have paranoid kind of reactions and just paranoid delusions as well. So they actively are in this experience that is out of world experience. And then highly agitated. So this is one thing to note if you have friends or family members who are returning home. The agitation level, it might not make sense, but this is part of the brain. The brain's still inflamed. The other thing is the hypoactivity part of it. This is really critical. They have internalized visions. So they're not experiencing it from outside. They're just kind of in their heads, like a movie screen inside their brain. Lots of confusion. And we see this in all ages. This was something that we kind of initially said for older patients, but confusion, then it progresses into withdrawing from society, and then even being non-communicative. So rolling back in terms of the language skills and communication levels. The other thing that has been notated is for the folks that are in the 60 years and older category, it can accelerate dementia. So it could trigger the onset of dementia or accelerate the dementia experience within the brain. So we do see the neurological impact. The other thing that has come out, pediatricians, the American Academy of Pediatrics has posted some communication about encouraging the return of children to school. This is based on limited information that we have about children's cases. The idea, the premise underlying this decision is that they feel like children might be less contagious or less apt to present with symptoms. But if you have a child that has any underlying health concerns that are articulated in multiple communication here on our live, but also on the CDC website, that might not necessarily be the best idea. So I just want to put that out there for parents. We are in that determination of what we're going to do with Gabriel in the fall semester. And schools are also dealing with the need to change the way their campuses are run, the structure, the layout, even changes to the air control. And all of this is floating and circling around the fact that schools are predicted to be laying off teachers. So the National Education Association has predicted that in the next 2 years, we will lose 700,000 teaching jobs or educational jobs. So that could be administration, it could be assistants in the room, it could be special education, ESOL, all different types of categories. Even teachers are potentially at risk. Part of that's due to the economic hit and not having enough financing and budget cuts locally. I do want to highlight in Massachusetts, already the school systems, multiple school systems in the state, there have been a total of 2,000 educators laid off already. So that is something that will impact our kids and is posing a potential challenge when we need to limit the contact of kids. We might be seeing a reduction in class size, which is always good. But when we reduce the class sizes, we need more teachers. And if we don't have budgets to hire them, what does that do to the safety factor? The other thing, there's been a big warning about the fake COVID antibody tests. So like yesterday, I highlighted, I think over here, I highlighted, let's see, I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. I highlighted that we have the phony face mask exemption card. So this is one COVID scam. The other COVID scam is very disturbing. The antibody there, so the COVID scam is free or surrounding the antibody tests. So it's been encouraged for folks to be cognizant of any offers for free antibody testing. Be aware that if there's any type of incentive, like, oh, you get a bonus, whatever, protein shake or a coupon or whatnot, that is going to be in the category of an online scam. Also targeted ads, the companies that are advertising the antibody test, that's a scam. You don't see that happening. We don't see reputable FDA approved tests being advertised. And the other thing too is robocalls. So there are people, these robocallers, there are call centers all over the world that are encouraging and targeting people and asking for things like their healthcare information, Social Security. So it's another way of identity theft. So just be cognizant. I have seen more robocalls come through on my cell phone. And so I know that elderly and folks who are vulnerable will be targeted, but also we're going to see that targeting online. So Instagram, Facebook, I haven't heard so much about YouTube, but just FYI, the biggest question to ask if you do encounter this is this test an FDA approved test? And you can even ask your physicians, your clinicians, the clinics where you might get tests, even, the drive-through centers, that's a given that is FDA approved. But just know that also the FDA is highlighting that these antibody tests are only 50% accurate. So it's not 100%. I know a lot of my friends who are in the clinical space, we're waiting until we see better efficacy to taking those tests. Now, this is really critical. I want to highlight 2 working papers that came out. Specifically, they address racial disparities within COVID, and then also the nature of the COVID death. Hey, buddy. Hi, bud. Do you want to say hi to everybody? Hi, everybody. What can I help you out with? Do you want one of these?
No. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. He's getting a little zinc. Here you go, bud. Okay. Close the door and go. Don't bother mommy and daddy. Okay, bud? I'll be done in a little bit. Love you. Okay. It's always fun when we're both working. He'll interrupt myself and Brian all the time. Okay. So these studies specifically detail or are created to find out and identify why are we seeing disparities, specifically within the fatality rate. So for instance, the research right now, we know that our people of color are heavily hit harder with COVID, particularly fatalities are greater. So our Black population, and this men and women and children and elders, so the ages are all included. So our Black population is 3.5 times more likely to die of COVID. So if they get infected, they're 3.5 times more likely to die. Our Latino population is 2 times more likely. Okay, and this is comparable to white and Asian populations. So there's one study that digs into, and like it's not a fancy title, and to be honest with you, this will probably get completely missed by some of the news outlets. So the title is "What Does and Does Not Correlate with COVID-19 Death Rates." It's not fancy. It's not attractive. Like a scientist came up with this title. But I will tell you, this specifically looks at, and this is coming out of this specifically, I believe this is out of UVA. No, this is MIT. So this is specifically out of MIT, this one. And this is out of, I think, UVA. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So either way, this particular study details more specifically about what's at risk or what's at play with this population, the increase or the likelihood of our Black and brown communities, our people of color. Why are they more at risk? And they go into identifying specifically all different types of models, all different types of variables, and they look at some aspects to consider. Public transportation, they directly identify what are some of the commonalities, the trends. So they say the magnitude of public transportation correlation is large. The share of people commuting via public transportation can range between 0 and 20% of our counties. Now, New York is going to skew that also because the majority of our cases right now are in New York. And so we know everybody in New York City is using public transport, or a lot of people use public transportation, very common. Whereas let's say in Atlanta, it's not as common because they don't always come out, the trains aren't in the suburbs. But what they identify is that there is correlation specifically to the use of public transportation. In fact, you're 10.4% more likely to see Black and Latino consumers, or Black and Latino populations would use public transportation. And so they're drawing that correlation that the likelihood of community spread might be greater in those communities based on that commonality, public transportation. So that's what they draw. There is a, let's see, let me see if I can find it for you. Usually I mark these before, but I actually did a screenshot. I will post this to my Instagram stories because I want you all to read this, and you can swipe up and you'll link right to the study so you can print it. But on here, they dig into things like, driving, public transportation, diabetes. So they bring in all different types. It's not because they have higher rates of uninsured poverty, diabetes. It's because of some other mechanism. For example, it could be because the quality of their insurance is lower, the quality of their hospitals is lower, or some other systemic reason. And they say our analysis can hopefully allow policymakers to focus on a narrower set of potential cause links. So I think that's a really important note that we can draw. Public transportation could be the risk factor, but ultimately the fatality is due to potentially insurance coverage as well as the hospitals maybe that they're heading to. This other paper, this is really critical. This details, and this is from MIT, from UVA. So there's the Department of Economics. UVA digs into the mortality and morbidity within African-American, Hispanic/Latino community populations. And they look at, an assortment of disparities that exist. So very similar, they're drawing that kind of the data trends to possibly some of these other factors. So I like to highlight this. I've promised all of you when I can and I get information and data that is substantial to highlight the reasons why we're seeing some of these changes, or at least the racial disparities with COVID. These two, I think, are going to be critical pieces in that study. So I'll post these and link these in the description below. I'll also post some details on YouTube. Now, the other thing before we get into stress in your immune system, I want to highlight that we're seeing some changes to cancer within the cancer world. So many of you might know I do a lot of work with cancer patients during their journey with cancer and then post recovery and successful conquering of the cancer cells within the body. I mostly work with them because they have a secondary condition that comes from either the surgery, the multiple removals of lymph nodes, or just a complication of cancer, which is called lymphedema. So that's one of my core specialties in my clinic. So I work with folks, we get them fitted for compression garments, and I do complementary therapies and care to help them manage this excess fluid that's within their body. So cancer patients are a big core component of my practice. And that's one of the reasons why I host this live show, because I do have actively engaged cancer patients who are concerned about their COVID risk. And so I want to highlight that specifically we have some more data on COVID risk with cancer patients. The risk is 13 to 28% increase in the fatality rate with cancer patients. So active cancer patients are at high risks for having complications with COVID. Part of that is attributed to, the weakening of the immune system. Sometimes we're immune suppressing their bodies with the different chemo, oral drugs, and then we also see impact with the radiation, specifically breast cancer patients. There's also been some indication that there is a change in cancer management right now. So this is somewhat encouraging because we have data that a lot of oncologists have not been implementing in their practices. For instance, some of the data shows that the radiation process, instead of having 30 treatments, one day after another day, so you have a week of 5 Monday through Friday, and you're doing that for a total of 6 weeks. You've got a total of 30 radiation treatments. The latest research coming out of the cancer clinics, and that's where a culmination of cancer doctors from the big cancer facilities come together and highlight the latest research and what they're seeing in trends. The cancer clinics are highlighting that it's actually better if we limit the amount of radiation, so scale it down, allow space in between, so we don't see the degree of burns and the degree of damage to the tissue. Well, what they're seeing is that they're employing some of these practices that they even admitted that one doctor was said, it would take years for us to implement it. But because of COVID, we want to lower the risk and we don't want folks to come in. And so this is really good in that category. Similarly, some of the adjustments and change in management has been giving oral medication versus IV chemo. So the oral medication might try and lower the estrogen, if it's estrogen positive or progesterone dominant, whatever it might be, the medication to lower that hormone that would progress the cancer cells or feed it, those are being administered versus folks going into the clinic and getting IV treatments. The challenge here, so we have reduction in radiation, which is aligning with the research that was showing it's actually better and more beneficial to reduce the amount of radiation. So that's being impacted. The other thing with the change in some of the oral treatments, that's just kind of staving off the need for chemo and whatnot. So they're being a little bit more strategic. But what they've communicated is the screenings are down. And so they're concerned, the cancer communities are concerned that because people are not going in for routine colon cancer screenings, breast cancer screenings, that we might see an increase in the cases that are tested, or the increase in cancer cases as this kind of gets limited. So just know, if you are in an area where there isn't community spread, or, and you might want to get really specific with your county, it is encouraged that you continue and maintain your screenings. And I would say this, there's a difference between like your traditional mammogram where you had good mammograms, and you don't feel any type of, tissue, or you're palpating something that's obscure. It might be something where it's okay to put it off until maybe we see a dip in your area. If there's something suspect, don't wait. I mean, that is one of the major encouragements. Or if you've had screenings and usually go in for a mammogram and then you need an ultrasound or a more intensive like 3D scan, those are folks that are at higher risk that might be a situation that needs to be more monitored. Similarly with colon cancer. So if you have family history of any type of cancers and you're actively screening and you've had maybe some, abnormal cells, those are appointments you don't want to put off. And that is a concern for a lot of doctors, that folks are, very concerned, and their telemedicine in the cancer world has increased. And these clinicians are very cognizant of these numbers. The fatality rates are higher for folks that do have cancer and catch COVID or have that exposure. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to talk a little bit about, in today's video specifically, is aimed at highlighting the role stress plays on the body. So I'm just going to do my little time marker here. So stress and immunity is the topic today for the latter half of our video. And I really want to highlight the role stress plays on your immune system. And you can eat the cleanest food, you can work out, you can try and be as positive and do meditation, exercise. Stress, internal, we have physiological stress, we have chemical stress, chemical imbalances. We can have external chemical stress. We can have environments where we have allergies, mold, as well as emotional, mental stress. Those are all factors that can cause stress. The immune system responds to that stress. And I really want to bridge the gap between what stress means, what it looks like, and some of those chemical elements that link stress equals weakened immunity. And then I'll give you some things that you can grab, you can have, and do at home to help support your immune system. So stress overall will trigger your fight or flight system. So your fight or flight system, those are your adrenal glands. Those are glands that sit right around the kidney. They actually sit just above the kidney. So if you kind of palpate the lower back, locate that bottom rib here on your back, and those right up under that rib will be where your little adrenal glands are tucked under. They're little tortilla-shaped glands. They're an outside and an inside part of the adrenals, and they're on both kidneys. Some people have one kidney. Some people have, minimally functional kidney. The adrenals traditionally will be functional with that function of the kidney. It's not uncommon for us to experience mid-back aches, like a muscular ache, if the adrenals are a little overwhelmed or overtaxed. And the adrenal glands literally are constantly adjusting. So they're on the lookout for, are there stressors in the body? Are we thinking about stress? It'll elevate our heart rate. It can cause heart palpitations. It can trigger a whole bunch of enzyme reactions and trigger certain synthesis of other hormones to occur in the body that then cause additional chemical stress. So stress is the root of almost all evil in the body when it comes to how does our body adapt to the environment it lives in. And these adrenal glands, they are what helps us survive. So this is a survival mechanism, but in our world nowadays, we're not cavemen and cavewomen anymore, but our body, we got buffering on Instagram. Our bodies are still hardwired as cavemen and cavewomen. So sometimes when Brian logs on, I'll lose internet. Sorry, Instagram, if we buffer, YouTube right now is looking pretty good. So essentially what happens is the adrenal glands are constantly evaluating the stress in the body, and they will output certain things like epinephrine or epinephrine. They'll output adrenaline. Those are common. We know, adrenaline surges. The chronic hormone that they produce is something called cortisol. And cortisol has a long-standing healthy and unhealthy relationship with the body. So a little cortisol is okay. It's part of survival. Chronic long-term cortisol production, this stress hormone, it's called the stress hormone, that can cause all sorts of havoc within the body. It can trigger neurotransmitter imbalances. So we'll see folks that have low levels of GABA, they'll have imbalances of norepinephrine, epinephrine. They will have imbalances in serotonin and dopamine and melatonin. Those are all changes that occur because of the adrenal glands. And we also see instances where when we have adrenal stress, We see cortisol production occur. We also see spikes of insulin. So it's not uncommon people have a little weight gain. They might have changes in the way their body's holding fluid, or even feel more inflamed. They might have inflamed passages. They might feel like kind of puffy and stuffy in the face, kind of water retention. For many of my patients that have lymphedema, they'll actually hold an excess of fluid on top of what they're normally carrying in the lymphatic world. So it could be a lymphatic burden. And that's one of those areas where we bridge this gap. So when we have excess of cortisol, we'll see it impair the lymphatic system. That's part of our immune system. So the lymphatic system clears out, it's a garbage disposal system. It clears out cellular debris. That's where we see lymph nodes, kind of people will say, oh, my lymph node is swollen. And everybody thinks you just only have lymph nodes here. We actually have anywhere from 500, 800 to 1,200 lymph nodes, depending on you and your body structure and your lymphatic structure. We'll have 800 to 1,200 lymph nodes throughout your body. They're up in the head. We have a lymphatic system of our brain. And then throughout the whole body, they are at the ends of our limbs. So right around the wrist and right around the ankle. They touch every organ. They touch every gland. They clear out and help our body be healthy and invigorate the immune response. So lymph nodes will see greater impairment because of cortisol. There's a lot of research. I've got a lot of that in a lot of my lymphatic related presentations to clinicians. But I will tell you, there's a direct correlation. Stress will weaken the lymphocyte production, and it will change the way your immune system responds. And so this is really critical when we start to realize, like, oh my gosh, we are under a lot of stress right now. And I know a lot of my patients will say, well, I'm under stress, but I'm dealing with it. It's just a juggling act. And like, I can take on more, there's all sorts of quotes like, I'm not given what I can't handle. But the reality is that our body can get to a max level. And I am feeling like there's a lot of angst and a lot of frustration, a lot of concerns, a lot of fear that's just happening globally. And we see this impairing your immune system. And so my concern for all of you who watch me every day, and for any of you new watching, joining our community, which I hope you'll hit the like, give me a like, everybody on YouTube, if you're enjoying this content. If you are feeling this, I want to really implore you to focus on reducing your stress levels. Some of it requires disconnecting. Some of it requires getting out, grounding, putting your feet in the dirt, going outside, getting in nature, doing things that are pleasurable and joyful for you. And then also balancing the stress with things called adaptogens. So I'm going to, for a lot of you, I'll be a broken record, but it's really important to note there are two really critical adaptogenic herbs that help our body adapt to stress. That's literally what they do. They help us and our body every day adapt to the different stressors we're dealing with. So they are very powerful. And this is something that is very beneficial. So this is a tea. I drink this a lot. I'm drinking this today in this morning's cup. It's a tea that has Tulsi. Tulsi is something called holy basil. And then it also has rhodiola. And this is a nice little tea sachet. It smells like orange, like an orangey rose flavor or kind of scent. It's very, very flavorful. This is something I'll post links down below, the Stress Adapt Tea. I love this. This is something you can drink every day. I'd usually drink this before 2 or 3 p.m. And Lori says, hug a tree. Yes, that's a very good way of getting grounded. If any of you guys want to hug pine trees, we have like probably 80 of them in our backyard. So we are tree huggers literally in our backyard. But rhodiola is something you can take in a liquid tincture. You can take it in herbal teas. I actually have sent away for rhodiola seeds. So I'm going to grow rhodiola. I actually have 2 Tulsi or holy basil plants. I'm really excited. One, I'm going to actually we have we have rain barrels that we've added to our backyard. It's really exciting. I'm now watering my plants with rainwater, which is awesome. Sort of chlorinated, yucky water that we try and filter out. But I'm going to put my second holy basil above that. But you can buy these, you can grow them. And holy basil is great for balancing the stress. So it's very impactful if you feel like stress is getting to you. If you've had hormonal challenges or changes in your menstrual cycle, if you're noticing you're just feeling angsty, having insomnia or sleep imbalances, notice if you are notating your blood pressure, spikes or changes in your blood pressure. Also, similarly, increase in your heart rate. That tends to be indicative of adrenal-related imbalances. Same thing, hair loss, changes in your skin tone, complexion, acne. Those can all be triggered by the imbalances with stress and cortisol. I will say for women, cortisol also will deplete our body of progesterone. And in the female body, it converts estrogen into testosterone. That can trigger some of the agitation, can trigger PCOS. It can trigger endometrial lining accumulation, heavier periods, cramps, and things like that. Now, in my men, the exact opposite happens. The enzyme for women is different than the enzyme for men. In men, the body actually converts testosterone into estrogen. So men become more estrogen dominant, women become a little bit more testosterone dominant and depleted in progesterone. So with some of these activities, you want to make sure you grab progesterone cream as well to offset that. But I will tell you, one of the things that I found more recently, this is a little bit of a newer product on the market, and we sell this in Fullscript, is the Daily Stress Balance. It's a spray bottle. It's a part of the Herbs to Go line, which is a newer line. And it has some amazing adaptogens that I really love to blend in. So it has eleuthero, which is a really powerful adaptogen. It also has holy basil, so we love that. It has ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a herb that's very beneficial for stress reduction. The kind of cautionary element there is if you have Hashimoto's, I don't recommend ashwagandha. Rhodiola, it has rhodiola, rose flower, and ginger, and it's a spray. And I will tell you, you can spray it, and it kind of, it's pretty intense. Like it has this kind of aromatherapy that kind of happens. It's not the most pleasant, I will tell you that. I actually will take a drink and I kind of wash it down. But I will say that if you are out and about, this is great to have in your purse, especially when you get stressed about people not wearing masks or being out and about and just exposure risk. You can carry this. It's easy, quick and go, two or three sprays. And the ginger is also good because the ginger will eliminate some of that cortisol overwhelm within the lymphatics. So there's another hit there. The ginger will clear and help drain the lymphatics. So ginger and turmeric are really good. So Bobby Schultz says, what is an adaptogen? So an adaptogen is an herb that is adaptogenic. So what it does is it helps allow your body to adapt to the environment it's in. So if one day you're physically active, more so than mentally active, it'll adapt to balance the stress. If you are more mentally active another day, it'll help to adapt. So they are ways, basically these herbs are supportive of the body and helps to balance your stress. So this is in my Fullscript store. When this gets wrapped on Instagram TV, I will post all the links. They'll all be down below. But let's see, why is ashwagandha not recommended for Hashimoto's? Ashwagandha is a nightshade. It is an inflammatory, nightshades are inflammatory to the thyroid glands. So eggplant and a lot of the squashes, zucchinis, and things like that. That's one of the reasons why we don't recommend it. It can be inflammatory in its production of the thyroid gland. So let's see. Okay, so that the other thing that I recommend is to employ, especially if you're dealing with a lot of stress, and if you want to bolster your immune system, I'd employ or deploy. Let me bring this down a little bit so you guys can see. I actually like to recommend my thymus tapping. So I actually have a full video on thymus tapping on YouTube. I can post it up there for all of you. I'll try and put a link in the descriptions box, in the descriptions below. But thymus, we call it the thymus tap or thymus bumping. But literally you kind of do like a Tarzan-y type of like action where you make a fist, and right in between, really just right above the breast, kind of in the upper space, right in between the breast, you kind of do this tapping. And so it's going to sound violent. It doesn't hurt. You're not going to break a rib or anything like that. But what you're doing is you're invigorating your thymus gland. The thymus gland, when we're born, it's actually bigger than our heart. It's part of our immune system. As we get older, we see the shrinking of that, and it sometimes becomes dormant. So if you are worried about your immune system, you're a cancer survivor, a cancer thriver, thymus tapping should be a part of your protocol every day, multiple times a day. The other thing that this will do is it will ease stress. It actually relaxes and calms the central nervous system. So the best way to reduce your stress is to calm your central nervous system down. That is a hardwiring that gets a little electrified. Caffeine in coffee will enhance that. So if you are feeling really stressed, you want to avoid caffeine and reach for the stress adapt tea, the stress suppress tea, and really kind of minimize that. Other herbals are passion flower. I love passion flower. I actually have 2 passion flower vines that I'm going to put into my garden. I grabbed from somebody here locally. They're pink and purple, and I plan on tincturing some of my herbs, so my medicinals. I'm excited. But passion flower is a beautiful tea. It's one of my favorite teas, and it is very central nervous system calming. It's a nerve tonic. It's a nerve sedative. So those are things that can help offset some of the symptoms of adrenal imbalances. I do have other related videos about stress and adrenals that I'll recommend you all watch. So I won't get too much into that. But if you are concerned about your stress levels, we can do saliva-oriented at-home saliva samples. So we can evaluate your cortisol levels throughout the day to really identify and pinpoint how do we hone in and lower and drop those levels. So that's really kind of my recommendation. Christine, and the other thing that I want to say with that thymus tapping, it's very common as you tap, usually you want to tap for like 10, 15, 20 seconds. After you're done tapping, you'll actually feel like a little invigoration. You might feel a vibration. You might feel like, okay, something's going on there. That's that thymus gland getting invigorated. You've just energized it, and you've also delivered circulation to that area. So you're waking it up. It's like a little wake up. And the thymus gland is very much in tune with your immune system, but also your stress level. So that gland is a really good gland to invigorate on the daily. So I want to remind all of you, if you're feeling a little stressed out, you kind of feel like that elevation of your blood pressure or even heart rate, do your thymus tap. And it's very, very calming. And Christine says, yes, at first I didn't have the vibration, then it started. It is pretty amazing. T Rose Lover says, I'm supposed to get an MRI on my ankle, but afraid to go because of COVID. It's not swollen anymore. So, the probably the MRI is going to be evaluating soft tissue tears. That is one of those things you just kind of have to evaluate whether it's still necessary. And that is something that is a challenge where folks are mid-treatments or they've put off some of the elective surgeries that are health-oriented, not like plastic surgeries and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that you have to balance and you have to weigh. Obviously, taking precautions. I mean, hospitals, if you can avoid the hospital and have some of those outpatient centers and clinics, you're more likely to just feel less angst about it. I mean, I know that we had some family that had to have emergency surgery on the nose. And, the concern, even the surgeon friends were like, don't go to the hospital, don't go to the ER, just to avoid it. And those are from surgeons that are saying that. Christine says, I drink Tulsi with mint, chaga, moringa, white tea, but I can't use rhodiola. It makes me feel sick. Yeah. And the thing is, I get a lot of questions like, why do I feel nauseous? Or, and this is not common, but herbs are food. And so it's not uncommon for you to have potentially an allergy to some of these. So just try them out. This adaptogenic tea, it's super adapt tea. That's the brand, the labeling, but the brand is the Republica tea. This is so good. And, I do 2 tea bags in the morning and I'll just kind of carry them out. I'm getting more, we're almost out of our honey. I'm getting some local honey from our area. sometime this week, and I'll just add a little honey and some lemon, just get the rind also. Very, very potent. Sometimes I'll shave in a little ginger, but thymus tapping is great. Oh, that's a good idea. Clive says thymus tapping works. Put an alarm on your calendar, on your phone to do this daily. I love that. Does moringa taste bad? So we add it into our smoothies, and we will, I do capsules, so they have capsules as well. Moringa is awesome. Okay, so Lori says my aunt is in the hospital in Boca Raton. Scary. She's 88. Oh gosh, I hope it's not COVID related. Okay, so let's see. Does the tea have caffeine in it? No, June, it does not. Christine says, someone on Hay House said, tell a tree your roots are deep and so are mine. I touch and say when I walk. And I would say the other thing too is if, another grounding activity, you can't really, some of you might be able to see it, but some more orchids to my mix here. And this is our room that gets the best sunlight in the evening. I've added orchids and I've added some peace lilies and other plants. Like I actually ordered these online. If you guys see this, this is for my office. It's still unhappy from its travel. You can tell, but it's happy on this side that's getting the sun. It's not a bad idea to add plants, and you can talk to them and even touch them. And, in our houses, certain plants can be oxygenators, so they can actually help clear the air. So getting in dirt, playing with that, having, you can have indoor plants and gardens, on a window shelf or a windowsill, and also, on porches for folks who are in condos and things like that. So there's a lot of ways to get kind of grounded, even if you don't, you live in the city or there are no trees around you and you can't be a tree hugger like us. There are definitely ways to ground. Let's see. So yes, please give me a thumbs up. So yes, the virus does have long-term effect, and we're still learning so much about this. And that is the one thing I really want to caution any of you who, we're seeing a lot of snap judgments, a lot of misinformation, like, oh, it's just a cold, it's just a flu. No, that's not true. And in fact, we know that the flu death rate for 2019 was 0.1%. We're seeing a death rate at 6% right now with COVID. And we're not done. We're not over this. And so it becomes really critical we take it seriously. Even if you are not at risk yourself, there's a possibility there may be some genetic elements that it could get turned on. It could be stressful. So you want to make sure that you're improving your micronutrients, you're eating optimally, you're exercising gently, you're mentally kind of keeping your body in check and trying to lower your stress. Because if you do come into contact and get COVID, stress will help offset that inflammatory response. So that cytokine response where the ACE2 receptors get really invigorated. Inflammation is triggered by cortisol. So if we can lower your cortisol before you get any type of exposure, the likelihood, and this is not, we don't have any data yet on this, but we do know stress, cortisol is inflammatory in its nature. It's systemic inflammation, and we need to lower your inflammation levels. So Mangomia says, I have plant snakes, spider plants, rubber plants, and peace lily. Love them. Yes, they're so good. And how about putting your feet in the grass outside? Yes, grass, feet, sand, dirt, any way you can ground with nature is good. Okay, Lucian Ingoglia, $10 live super chat. Thank you. I'm so grateful. And so, yes, when you're stressed, one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of you who have underlying health conditions, especially autoimmunity, you guys experience pain and flares. Very common. Stress weakens the immune system. You have the autoimmunity that gets really overwhelmed. It gets ramped up. And what we're seeing is the same type of response within the COVID body in a whole assortment of ways. Neurological, we see the blood clotting, we see all sorts of other kind of things. Okay, so Angie says, please consider reading A More Excellent Way by Henry Wright. Good. There are so many people with testimonial videos, illness, allergies, eczema, autoimmune, being healed. Okay, so, and Freddie says, my plants talk back, believe it or not. I love it. I heard that some peptides might help after COVID. Potentially, I haven't seen any specific details on that, Magdalena. Okay. Girl Friday doesn't believe anything. That's okay. You're entitled to that. You should probably log off if you don't believe it instead of trolling my channel. Okay, so can you mix adaptogens during the day? That's an excellent question. So with the adaptogens, there are multitudes of adaptogens. Rhodiola is the one that I like to have kind of in the morning, early afternoon, and then I won't recommend it later in the day because it can balance the body in such a way. I will also say that for our fitness enthusiasts, it's a good idea to add in rhodiola to your mix. This is the single most researched, clinically researched and studied adaptogenic herb. It's a Siberian herb, and it's been studied by Russians, the Russian astronauts and Russian athletes. Instagram's buffering. Okay, Instagram, you guys are buffering. I'm going to wrap this. You guys can join me on YouTube. I don't know what's going on, but I'll wrap you guys. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll see you then. Okay, so let me save this. Okay, so save, download. Okay, sorry, you guys. I got to do my little download and save for IGTV. I don't know why I was buffering, but I have a feeling it's because Brian's also on. Limitations of working at home online. Okay, so let's see here. Save this and then share to IGTV. Next. Okay, so COVID. I just titled this. Okay, so ask me some questions. I'll just answer a few questions and then I've got to run. COVID and COVID news. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'll just post that now. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Karen says is let me see, I just missed it. Where is it? Sometimes this scrolls down. Karen, is moringa high in oxalate? I believe there are oxalates in there. I just don't know the quantity. I don't know the levels. Okay, so I will tell you on Freddie's note, I actually talked to my orchids and my roses. I'm one of those, like, I like to grow like plants that are sometimes harder to grow. Like my rose garden's kicking. And I've successfully found a way to keep the deer out. I use these solar paneled mole rodent things. They stick in the ground. There are these stakes and they beep and they buzz, and the deer have not, I should like really knock on fake wood. The deer haven't eaten my plants, my roses at all this year. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I will say, plants do respond. They like energy. And I really do believe that. We take the cortisol test now. Okay, so Angie says, we take the cortisol test now. Will results walk us through what to do next? Or do you have to wait for a consult? So Angela, that's an excellent question. Right now, I'm not open for consults just with our scheduling. But I will say that the results, you guys, we ship out the test to you. You take the test, you send it to the lab. The lab sends the results back to you. It's a little bit different than the in-clinic work. And then you guys can then email me a PDF. I review it and make recommendations. So that's super easy, not anything overly complicated. But the reports are very extensive. You will see the readout, the chart. It even details other symptoms that you might experience. So that is really critical. But definitely evaluating cortisols is the best way to analyze the degree of stress and the impact on your body. Cortisol really is one of the main reasons why we have degenerative diseases. It triggers so many different enzymatic reactions that are inflammatory in nature. They it just impairs our immune system and actually causes more free radical damage. So we see aging. So anybody who wants to minimize their anti-aging, wants to balance their hormones, wants to feel better, wants to optimize their heart health, skin health, minimize excess fluid, even cellulite is cortisol in its orientation. Those are all good reasons to focus on balancing that. Pau says, can you please link vitamin D3K you sell in your store? Yeah, let me write that down. Okay, so I have lots of links to give you guys. Let's see. Christine says, my friend brings me rocks for my shade garden. Some want to come, some want to stay in place. That's awesome. We have, we're going to do something like that with Gabriel. We're working on a whole bunch of stuff for Gabriel's little play zone outside, although it's got really hot, really humid. And then we had that dust situation come in. Let's see. Carolyn says, in April, my head CHF work failure. They had to put in a stent in my vein that was blocked over my heart. I was wondering if the tapping would disturb that in any way. It should not. It depends. You know, what I would say is I'd be cautious of any scar tissue, depending on, you know, where the stent is. The best would be to call your doctor and ask. Generally, and I've had folks with stents have car accidents and things like that, or they're like fitness enthusiasts and they go back to, you know, doing crazy stuff. So I would just ask. Let's see. Mary Lou, go back to other stress relief shows. Oh, yes. So, yeah, I do have a whole bunch of shows here. Jingle All the Way says, I love the stress suppressed tea. It's amazing. It really is. Lucienne, thank you. She says, thanks for all the great info today. You are a great help to me. Finally finding answers. I will send you test results for a recommendation. Thanks again. Thank you. Any advice for balance issues related to stress? So, okay, Dominica, one of the things that I will say, and we see this, and I have a whole bunch of ear-related, like fluid draining related videos. Cortisol can cause fluid retention and accumulation of fluid. One of the things that it does, it impairs the lymphatic system and a lot of kind of clearing and draining. So you might have some fluid retention, some fluid in your eustachian tubes. So that I would encourage you to watch some of my ear popping, ear clearing, draining videos that can balance the balance, if you will. But I will say some of the things that we do see, depending on the state of adrenal fatigue or adrenal imbalances, it's going to come in for you. If you get up, you kind of get dizzy. So the big question is it blood pressure, adrenal related balance, or is it ear fluid imbalances? So there's potentially some other sources for that. It's hard to, you know, I don't know your history or background to really dig in, but I'd start with those two. All right, friends, I've got to run. I am so grateful for your time. Please hit the like button. Give me a thumbs up on this video. And I will post all these links. Definitely check out Instagram. I will post some of these links on the swipe up option. That's really exciting. The other thing too is I will post some stories on the swipe up of some of these items. So Instagrammers, they'll be able to grab these direct links. So that's helpful. And there'll be direct links down below. Freddie says, boy, that was especially interesting about stress and balance. Absolutely. So thank you, everybody. Grateful for your time. Appreciate your participation. Tune in tomorrow. We'll talk more about COVID news. And hang in there. You guys are doing great. Just really employ the social distancing, staying at home, and when all absolutely necessary, going out, but making sure you're protecting yourself. So thank you. I am grateful for everybody. Big thumbs up. And thank you, Pat, for moderating and for our live super chat with Lucienne. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.